A quiet evening in Kazan turned into the beginning of one of the biggest digital scandals in recent Russian history. On December 5th, employees of the IT company Micord gathered at a local bar after what seemed like a routine workday. Laughter, drinks, and the hum of conversation filled the room. Yet, just a few hours earlier, their entire digital infrastructure had been obliterated. Servers, databases, repositories, everything was gone. By the time they noticed, hackers had already taken over their social media accounts, posted a statement in the company's name, and left a trail of chaos in their wake. It wasn't just an act of sabotage, it was a message. At first glance, Micord seemed like just another regional tech company. Founded in 2007 in Kazan by IT entrepreneur Alexander Nikolaev, it had spent nearly 2 decades quietly developing digital systems for government agencies. Their past projects included databases for the Ministry of Labor, systems for Rosatom, and even regional platforms for civil registries. But in recent years, Micord's ambitions had grown. The company became a key developer for one of Russia's most sensitive digital systems, the Unified Military Registry, or ERVU, designed to transform how the government tracks and mobilizes its citizens for military service. That night, as Micord's employees realized what had happened, panic began to spread through private chats. "Everything's down," one tester wrote. "The Git, the servers, the system, all gone." Another replied bitterly, "I wonder which journalists they'll send this to. Probably no one will even write about it." They were wrong. Within hours, hackers who claimed responsibility began leaking fragments of the company's internal files. Soon, more than 100 gigabytes of technical documentation, emails, and correspondence with government officials found their way into the hands of investigative journalists. The leak revealed not just how deeply Micord was embedded in state projects, but also what the Russian government was preparing for. Inside those files lay blueprints for the electronic mobilization system, details about data collection, and even modules created specifically for intelligence agencies. What the hackers uncovered was not just a database, but a complete digital infrastructure that could be used to summon millions of citizens to war with a few clicks. By the following morning, the Micord office was silent. Their internal tools, Jira, Confluence, and version control systems, had been wiped clean. In an emergency call on December 8th, CEO Ramil Gabdarrahmanov tried to calm his exhausted team. "They've destroyed everything," he admitted. "We have no servers left. The hackers took everything. We can only rely on what's stored locally on your computers." His words revealed the extent of the damage and the magnitude of what the hackers had discovered. Micord wasn't just another subcontractor. It had been quietly entrusted with creating some of the most critical components of Russia's digital mobilization apparatus. According to documents later verified by independent experts, the company developed the user interface for military enlistment offices, analytical dashboards for the Ministry of Defense, and even a special services module, a system that could remove or alter records about certain individuals. On paper, the system was meant to improve efficiency. In reality, it offered the power to erase people from the mobilization lists without a trace. Journalists from Important Stories, one of Russia's most respected investigative outlets, spent weeks analyzing the data. They uncovered the network of state contracts that tied Micord to Rostelecom, the massive state telecommunications corporation. Through Rostelecom's subsidiary, RT System Communications, Micord received more than 377 million rubles for its role in developing the ERVU. Behind every agreement stood familiar names, former ministers, powerful executives, and bureaucrats who had quietly built a digital foundation for future mobilization. For years, the Russian government had been working toward a system that would make military conscription faster, cleaner, and less chaotic. The failures of 2022's mobilization, when local enlistment offices struggled with outdated paper records and incomplete data had exposed deep flaws in the process. The ERW was meant to fix that, to ensure that next time the state would be ready. And MyCourt's code, now in the hands of hackers, revealed just how close they were to completing that vision. But before revealing what exactly the hackers found, before diving into the depths of what the ERW truly is and how it operates, we need to understand why this system was built in the first place, and how a seemingly obscure company from Kazan ended up at the heart of it all. So stay tuned, because what follows isn't just a story about a hack or a failed security system. It's about how digital control over millions of people was designed, tested, and nearly perfected, until one December night when the system itself became a target. If you want to support our work and see the next chapter of this investigation, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this report. Your support helps us uncover the stories that others would rather keep hidden. The truth behind this digital mobilization machine is just beginning to unfold. When the scale of the breach became clear, what shocked observers most wasn't just the destruction of MyCourt's servers, but the depth of what had been exposed. The hackers hadn't simply vandalized a corporate network. They had uncovered a detailed portrait of how the Russian state planned to digitize its military mobilization. The ERW, or Unified Military Registry, was not a theoretical project. It was nearly complete, its framework tested, and its mechanisms already integrated with other federal databases. Inside its architecture lay a system capable of tracking, summoning, and restricting millions of citizens with administrative precision. According to internal correspondence obtained from the hack, MyCourt had been tasked with building several vital components of the ERW. Among them were the personal dashboard for citizens, the analytical reports used by generals and regional military officials, and a classified module designed specifically for intelligence agencies. This last component, known as the Unified Integration Component, or EKS, granted select operatives the power to alter, mask, or delete individual records from the registry. In practice, this meant that while ordinary citizens would find themselves unable to escape conscription or travel restrictions, those with connections to the state's security services could simply vanish from the system altogether. The story began years earlier. After the chaotic mobilization of 2022, when paper summonses were lost and draft offices collapsed under bureaucratic strain, Moscow resolved to modernize the entire military registration process. The Ministry of Digital Development, headed by Maksut Shadayev, was formally designated as the lead agency for creating the system, while the Ministry of Defense served as its functional customer. But behind these official titles, the real power rested with Rostelecom and its subsidiaries, RT System Communications and Solor, which subcontracted the core development work to companies like MyCourt. This network of partnerships allowed the state to build a complex digital infrastructure without drawing public attention to any single participant. In February 2024, MyCourt signed a confidential agreement to join the ERW project. The contract was not made public, but leaked documents reveal that the company received nearly 400 million rubles through Rostelecom's internal channels. This was not MyCourt's first major state project. It had previously built regional databases, automated systems for civil registry offices, and even modules for Rosatom's internal operations. But nothing compared to this. The ERW would link together data from tax records, healthcare systems, law enforcement databases, and digital ID platforms. Every citizen's education, medical history, family status, employment, property ownership, and travel data would be stored and cross-referenced. It would become a digital mirror of the Russian population, one that could be mobilized or restricted at will. Internal chats show that MyCourt's developers struggled with the pressure. The deadlines were impossible, the security requirements contradictory, and the coordination with the Ministry of Defense nerve-wracking. In one leaked message, project manager Alina Safiulina wrote, "We were scolded again after the government meeting. They say the dashboard isn't ready for demonstration. They want it by tonight. Her exhausted colleague responded, "That's unrealistic. We haven't even finished testing the data filters." Yet the team pushed forward. The government wanted results, and delays were not an option. The project had high-profile overseers. Deputy Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin personally reviewed progress twice, while Defense Minister Andrei Belousov and Maksud Shadaev received regular updates. Supervising the civilian side of the project was Yulia Levitskaya, Director of Project Control for National Initiatives in the Russian government. Officially, she described the ERVU as a peaceful digital reform that would simplify citizens' interactions with enlistment offices. Unofficially, she issued instructions that directly contradicted her public statements. In leaked messages from May 2024, Levitskaya directed developers to include analytical tools for 3 key business tasks: mobilization, contract enlistment, and volunteer recruitment. The General's dashboard, she wrote, must allow the Ministry of Defense to view potentially mobilizable citizens, potential contract soldiers, and potential volunteers. The dashboard itself became a central point of the system, a sleek interface displaying real-time data on mobilization readiness. On its front page were numerical indicators showing how many men were eligible for call-up, how many summonses had been issued, and how many deferments or exemptions had been granted. It also included search functions that allowed users to locate individuals by name, region, or even health condition. Internal testing revealed the sensitivity of this data. When military representatives requested the inclusion of family information, specifically the number of children under 16, developers raised concerns that such data could be misused to prioritize or exclude certain citizens. Yet the request was approved. During one tense online meeting in May 2024, Rostelecom Vice President Vladimir Korolyov referred to intelligence agencies as our supervising bodies. He cautioned that certain analytics might reveal individuals who should remain undiscovered. To address this, MyCord was instructed to finalize the EKS, the integration module capable of invisibly editing records. The concept was simple but disturbing. A mechanism allowing designated security agencies, such as the FSB, SVR, and FSO, to protect their personnel by deleting them from the registry. In a leaked document dated January 9, 2025, the official implementation note described how every new record entering the system would be locked for 72 hours, giving operators time to verify and modify the data before it became visible. In plain language, this meant the system could erase anyone, completely and without a trace. The hacker's analysis of MyCord's internal documentation revealed how deeply embedded this feature was. Audit logs, normally used to track data changes, were intentionally disabled for EKS operations. Even the system's cryptographic gateways were programmed not to record these interactions. Full invisibility of data manipulation, read one internal memo. No administrative traceability. To some within the project, this was a security necessity. To others, it was a moral nightmare. Developers began to joke bitterly in their chats, calling the EKS the magic eraser. One of them wrote, "If you're on the wrong side of power, you stay in the registry. If you're on the right side, you disappear." The irony was that while the ERVU was advertised as a cutting-edge digital system, MyCord's own internal security was outdated and fragile. The company relied on expired firewall licenses, unpatched versions of Windows, and VPN tools disabled by Western sanctions. When their firewall subscription expired after the invasion of Ukraine, no one renewed it. "That was our way in," one hacker later said. Their protection failed because of the same sanctions they used to justify their system's secrecy. By late 2025, MyCord had lost not only its servers, but also its credibility. The Ministry of Defense temporarily suspended its access to the ERVU network, while Rostelecom's engineers scrambled to salvage whatever fragments they could. Yet the leak had already spread across encrypted channels, analyzed by journalists, technologists, and human rights defenders. What they uncovered was a disturbing convergence of bureaucracy, technology, and repression. A system that could automate control over an entire nation. The ERVU was built to store data on 25 million citizens, effectively encompassing Russia's full mobilization potential. Each entry included over 300 attributes: education, employment, address history, health conditions, and even property details. The system could issue up to 1 million summonses per year and automatically coordinate travel restrictions for those who failed to appear. The Ministry of Defense viewed this as efficiency. Activists saw it as digital coercion. In interviews, former developers admitted the moral weight of their work. Half of the original team quit when they realized what the project was for, one said. They told themselves they were building an administrative tool. Then they saw the military dashboards, the mobilization algorithms, and they couldn't stay. Yet others remained, lured by stable pay and official immunity from conscription, privileges granted to employees of accredited IT firms. When asked about the attack, Mikord's CEO Ramil Gabdarrahmanov tried to sound composed. "It happens," he said to reporters. "Many are attacked these days." But his staff knew better. The company's private chats showed despair and exhaustion. Some joked about the irony of creating a tool to send others to war while living comfortably abroad. Project manager Alina Safilina, who helped design the ERVU architecture, had spent years in Vienna with her husband before returning to Russia, a detail that underscored the double standards within the very system she helped build. And yet, despite the chaos, the ERVU survived. The servers were rebuilt, the modules reconnected, and the system restored under even stricter supervision. But the hackers' revelations had already exposed the truth. This was not merely a database for administrative efficiency. It was an instrument of state control, capable of mapping the lives of millions and deciding who among them would go to war. Before we move to the next and final part, remember that what's been revealed so far is only half the story. The deeper implications, how this system could be used, who benefits from it, and what it means for the future of Russia's digital governance, will be explored in full next. Make sure to stay until the end and subscribe so you don't miss the final part of this investigation. The story of Mikord and the Unified Military Registry does not end with the hack, or even with the revelations of how the system was built. What followed was a far-reaching fallout that exposed the inner workings of Russia's growing digital surveillance state and raised unsettling questions about who holds the power to decide the fate of millions. After the breach, government agencies moved quickly to contain the damage, but the truth had already escaped into the public domain. The documents, emails, and source code fragments, analyzed by investigative journalists, revealed how close Russia had come to completing a nationwide digital mechanism for mobilization, a mechanism that blurred the boundaries between civilian life, military control, and total surveillance. By the end of December 2025, independent cybersecurity experts confirmed that the hackers had accessed Mikord's entire internal development environment, including repositories that contained integrations with the Ministry of Defense and Rostelecom systems. Among the files were architectural diagrams showing how the ERVU connected to other state databases, the Federal Tax Service, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Pension Fund, and even regional healthcare registries. The system had been designed to operate in complete synchronization with these institutions, updating personal records in real time. For example, if someone changed their address, the ERVU would automatically know. If a citizen applied for a new passport or registered a vehicle, the data would instantly synchronize. If someone tried to leave the country after receiving a summons, border control would already have the information before they reached the airport. This level of integration transformed the registry from a bureaucratic tool into something closer to a national control grid. In internal correspondence, MyCord engineers described it as a living organism that never sleeps. The scope of collected information was staggering. Employment histories, family relations, criminal records, education, and even medical diagnoses. Every data point contributed to an algorithmic model that could rank citizens by their mobilization potential. Analysts at the Ministry of Defense referred to this as predictive mobilization analysis. The system could calculate how many people in a given region were fit for service, how many had deferments, and how many could be called up within 48 hours. It was digital conscription at industrial scale. Behind the official justifications, efficiency, modernization, and national security, lay a deeper purpose: control. Human rights groups like Go Into the Forest, which received the leaked data, warned that the registry could be used not just for conscription, but also for broader repression. The documents included instructions for imposing travel bans, restricting access to public services, and even blocking digital payment systems for those who failed to appear at enlistment offices. Once the ERVO is fully operational, one technical report noted, no action by a citizen will occur outside the system's awareness. To many, it was a chilling vision of a future where every move, every document, every click would feed into a structure designed to enforce obedience. The consequences of the hack rippled far beyond MyCord. Within government circles, officials scrambled to assign blame. Rostelecom executives accused MyCord of negligence. MyCord's management blamed outdated infrastructure and sanctions. And the Ministry of Digital Development quietly launched internal audits across multiple contractors. But the real damage was political. For the first time, the public could see evidence that the government had been developing tools for a potential new wave of mobilization, despite repeated assurances that no such plans existed. The documents left little room for interpretation. They mentioned mobilization dashboards, draft communication channels, and priority call-up parameters. Even Yulia Levitskaya, who had publicly insisted that the system was purely civilian, was caught giving directives about mobilization, contracts, and volunteers. The contradiction was undeniable. Amid this turmoil, the human side of the story came to light. Developers who had worked on the ERVO began speaking, cautiously, often anonymously, to journalists. Some described an atmosphere of fear and moral exhaustion. We were told this would be a modernization project, said one former employee. Later, it became clear that it was a system for war. Others spoke about the constant surveillance within the company itself. Work chats were monitored, political discussions banned, and developers were required to check in through VPN tunnels that logged their keystrokes and hours. Ironically, a company that built the architecture of control lived under control itself. The leaked messages revealed glimpses of ordinary lives tangled in extraordinary circumstances. A tester named Ruslan Gazdinov, who had served in the army years earlier, wrote bitterly in one chat, calling his military experience a nightmare I'll never forget. He said he didn't want to be part of a system that would send others into the same hell. Another developer, exhausted after months of overtime, joked about building the digital handcuffs for our own generation. Others, however, rationalized their work. One message from a senior engineer read, "If we don't build it, someone else will. At least we can try to make it work properly." This moral fragmentation mirrored the larger dilemma of Russia's IT sector. Young professionals caught between survival, patriotism, and complicity. Beyond the individual stories, the hack exposed the geopolitical layers behind the project. Investigators found that McCord had worked closely with contractors linked to defense industries, some of which were under Western sanctions. The company's internal documents referenced modules adapted from older systems used by the Ministry of Emergency Situations and the Federal Protective Service. Parts of the codebase even contained remnants of projects previously developed with international partners before 2022. Software originally designed for civilian registries, now repurposed for military logistics. The boundary between civilian and military technology had effectively disappeared. Technically, the ERVU was an impressive feat. It used a low-code platform called WebBPM, developed by MyCord itself, allowing rapid deployment of new modules without extensive coding. This made it easier to update dashboards, modify data flows, and add functionalities requested by the Ministry of Defense. But it also created vulnerabilities. The same flexibility that allowed rapid development made the system prone to errors and breaches. Independent experts who examined the leaked code described it as fragile, inconsistent, and under-tested. One of them wrote, "It's like building a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. It looks solid until the first real storm hits." That storm came on December 5th. The hack itself was methodical and devastating. The attackers infiltrated MyCord's VPN through expired security certificates, moved laterally across the network, and gained administrative access to all servers. Within hours, they deleted over 80 virtual machines, 43 databases, and 12 terabytes of backup archives. They left a message on the company's internal channels. "You built a system to track people. Now you've been tracked." Employees tried to restore data from local machines, but the damage was irreversible. Rostelecom's emergency response teams arrived days later, only to confirm that most infrastructure was beyond repair. MyCord's leadership told staff they would be unable to resume full operations until mid-December, but even then recovery proved slow and incomplete. For the hackers, however, destruction was not the goal. They wanted exposure. They released portions of the data to important stories and human rights groups, ensuring that what they found could not be buried. The publication that followed detailed every layer of the registry, from the political decisions that birthed it to the ethical collapse of those who built it. It showed how an idea conceived as a bureaucratic modernization became a tool of mobilization and control. And perhaps most importantly, it revealed the fragility of the very system it sought to enforce. If hackers could dismantle MyCord in a single night, what did that say about the supposed security of the ERVU itself? By early 2026, parts of MyCord had resumed limited work under tight oversight, but the company's reputation was destroyed. Several employees left the country, fearing investigation. CEO Ramil Gabdarrahmanov tried to downplay the situation, giving interviews where he insisted that no critical state data was compromised. Yet, leaked correspondence contradicted this, showing that sensitive government documents, including those from the Ministry of Defense, had been stored unencrypted on company servers. Internal emails revealed that even during development, officials had expressed concern about MyCord's lax security. "They were never ready for a project of this magnitude," wrote one Rostelecom executive. "We needed speed, not quality, and that's exactly what we got." Meanwhile, the state pressed forward. The ERVU was quietly rebuilt under a new set of contractors, its modules refined, and its infrastructure moved deeper into classified networks. The government continued to frame it as a benign digital service for citizen convenience, but insiders knew better. The system was operational. Summonses were being sent electronically. Regional enlistment offices were testing automated notifications. For many Russians, the digital summons had already become a reality. And so, the MyCord story became more than just a tale of a company undone by its own hubris. It was a glimpse into a future where technology and governance merged into a single apparatus of control. A future